Welcome into the Fantasy Guides podcast. My name is Andrew Teuscher, and I am joined today by the owner, the operator of Fantasy Guides and FantasyGuides.com, Stephen Rippey, as well as master of the spreadsheets wizard himself, AJ Cleaver, are here today to join us to talk about your 12 matchups. It's so late in the season. This is when it really matters. We're going to get you into the playoffs. I promise. Reach out, take my hand. We're securing you there. We're going to go over all of the starts, all of the sits, everything you need to know. You're a bettor? Well, we're going to go over all the stuff you'd probably want to know for that too. Everything, all in one package, all here for you. And hopefully we get through it quicker than normal this week because, my goodness, the buys stink.
They do. They call it, was it Bymageddon? Bygeddon? Something
We have
like
another
that this
one in 2 weeks too.
Yeah. Well, we only have two more left, right? This week, and then I don't think there is one next week, but I think week 14. And then we're done. Then we're done with buys, which I can't wait.
The buys, like, I get it, understandable. We need to keep doing it. But I remember good and well some weeks where there were no teams on bye way early in the season. Let's switch that up.
You know what, Andrew? You were probably not born when this happened, or you might not have been born. I don't know. But I remember when they added, I want to say, the Houston Texans. So maybe you were just born. In 2002, they had an odd number of teams. So the way the bye weeks worked, I remember the San Diego Chargers had a bye week 1.
What on earth? Okay, well, this is better than that nonsense, but we can still get it better than that. Yes, Steven's old. He remembers those days. But AJ, tell us about something that's going to happen in the future. What is our first matchup?
Alrighty, our first matchup for this week is the Vikings Bears. The Vikings are favored by 3.5. Over under is 39.5. And I was looking at Sam Darnold. You know, he's been in the league since 2018. He seems like he might be an older quarterback, right? Just since he's been around for so long. But he's only 3 years older than Michael Penix.
Yeah, that checks out.
I do believe that. He came in pretty young. Was he like 21 when he came in? And Penix, as Andrew, probably why Andrew doesn't like him, super old.
So old. I think he's like 24. Oh. Holy cow, 1 foot in the grave.
Horrible, at least the fantasy grave. Well, Andrew, I think from this game, the guys that I kind of like the wide receivers in this one. Now, let's take that for what it is. I don't like them as wide receiver ones, but I think Rome Odunze, DJ Moore, I think those guys can be startable as flex wide receiver 3s. Minnesota giving up the 3rd most fantasy points to wide receivers. We've seen Rome start to look a little bit better recently. But I'm also not sleeping too much on Keenan Allen. He has had the most targets on this team over the past 3 weeks. I believe he has 24 targets over the last 3 weeks. I think Rome just has one fewer than that. And we saw DJ Moore with 13 fantasy points last week. So I think all of these wide receivers can be started. I'm a little nervous about DeAndre Swift in this matchup. Now, he did have that super long touchdown last week that helped him out. But the Vikings giving up the 2nd fewest points to running backs. They're giving up the 2nd fewest total yards. So I think he will struggle in this one. He is explosive, so maybe he gets you a big play, but I am worried about him. I've got him as a back-end RB2. And then I'm sticking away from Cole Kmet and probably staying away from Caleb Williams unless I'm desperate.
Yeah, we like the receivers in this one because in a lot of weeks, the Bears receivers aren't playable at all. Like, they've just been absolutely miserable. DJ Moore finally had double digits this week. That was the first double-digit game he's had since week 5. So it's just been absolute misery.
And it was still only 13. He didn't get you that much. But yeah, so I don't expect a big ceiling from any of these guys. But like I said, I do think they're startable.
Wide receiver 3s, you can put them out there. We're seeing better usage for, I think, DJ Moore. We saw that last game. Simplification in the offense. DJ Moore, a couple of screens. We want to see more. I think that was half of his catches with screens. But that's what he's good at. Do more of that. Simplify it. Rome Odunze got 11 targets. Let's see more of that. Keenan Allen, Fat Keenan, leave Fat Boy on the bench. I'm still not willing to start Cole Kmet either, though. And definitely not Caleb Williams yet.
No, I agree. Other side of the ball. So the Vikings, obviously, Justin Jefferson's an auto start. I do temper expectations for this entire offense. The Chicago defense has been pretty legit this year. They give the fewest points to both the quarterback position and the wide receiver position. Not quite as good at stopping the running back, so I'm feel a little more bullish on Aaron Jones, especially considering that the Vikings are favored by 3.5 in this one. But back to the, Darnold, I'm not really looking to start him. Got him as my QB 19 right now. I just think the matchup's too difficult. It's in Chicago. Weather could be an issue, so I'm worried about that. TJ Hawkinson, I got him as my tight end 9, but I'm not expecting a big game from him. Chicago giving up the 10th fewest to the tight end position. The big question mark, Jordan Addison. Last week I said don't start him. He had 8 targets, which I kind of like. Tennessee was a tough defense. He only caught 3 of them, but he did house that one. It was something around about 50 yards or so. So he is a playmaker. He can make those big plays, but more times than not, I'm probably sitting him in this matchup, Andrew.
Certainly not trying to push him into my lineup unless I have to. But again, we have so many teams on bye that you might have to. He's boomer bust, wide receiver 3 territory. He's had over 70 yards just once this season. It's a touchdown or you hate yourself playing him in this one. And I think the under hits. I don't like this matchup for a lot of these guys.
Yeah, it's a division game too. And like I said, I think the weather is supposed to be an issue, or at least somewhat of an issue in this one.
It's still Chicago in November, so I don't want to be outside. I'm sure they don't either.
Yep.
All right, AJ, get us to the next one.
All right, we're going to Detroit versus Indy, where they don't have to worry about the weather this week.
Detroit never does.
The Lions are favored by 7. Over under is 49.5. And last week, Toysher, you actually had a little bit of a fun time watching Anthony Richardson throw the ball. He completed 66% of his passes, which is the first time he's completed over 65% in a single game where he played start to finish.
And what stinks is his adjusted completion percentage was one of the best of the week. It was pushing like 80, 90% because he had a bunch of throwaways, a couple at the end of a half. He played phenomenally. Steven, I'm forcing us to start on that side of the ball. I got some thoughts on my man, Anthony Richardson. All right.
Well, I'll probably regret this. I do currently have Richardson as a QB1. I've got him ranked 12th overall, Andrew, because, that last week's matchup against the Jets wasn't an easy one, and he came through big time with 28 fantasy points. He just has that dual threat ability. It makes me nervous. I feel like this could be a roller coaster with Richardson where you feel like you can trust him, and then as soon as you do, we can't forget how bad he was. So I do see a scenario where he gets completely shut down by a good Detroit defense, but Detroit has given up the 10th most completions per game and the 10th most passing yards per game. So I think he has a chance. The thing is, they're not giving up hardly any passing touchdowns. They're giving up the fewest passing touchdowns in the league. So that's where I see he could struggle. I don't love Jonathan Taylor in this one. Detroit is just stifling against running backs. They're giving up the fewest touches, the 4th fewest fantasy points to the position, and the 3rd fewest yards. So I've got him as an RB2 this week. I got him at 15th overall. Josh Downs, that guy is just a stud. You got to play him. It's actually a good matchup for him. I've got him as my wide receiver 14 right now. Detroit gives up the most receptions to the position, the 4th most fantasy points to the position. So I think all of these receivers can be played depending on how deep your league is, how desperate you are. I think that both Alec Pierce and Adonai, they could have big plays. They could be DFS plays. But the guy that I'm most excited about in this one is Downs.
Downs is just, I kept saying it every week. He's the best wide receiver on this team, and everyone's getting to see that now. Anthony Richardson is the only guy I'm trying to, like, you have him as a QB1, so it's the only guy I guess Taylor, but the receivers, take him, leave him, I don't care. Richardson, I kept saying over and over again, he is throwing to the right spots. He's simply missing the wide open guys. And we saw last game, rolling with confidence, he finally got there. This is a schematic dream for the Colts in that their passing game should succeed. A lot of man defense on behalf of the Detroit Lions. That's a very similar thing to what the Jets wanted to do last game, tried to do, and Anthony Richardson threw for almost 300 yards on them. So we're going to see the Colts wide receivers get open. I guarantee they'll be open. Now the question is, will AR be able to hit them? And will he be able to add some of the ground? QB1, I think, is exactly right, Steven. Mostly because I think there's an insane boom potential. And I even think he has a floor with the rushing that won't scare you away too much. So I'm excited for this one.
Yep. No, me too. And they should be, they are 7.5 point underdogs in this one. So he's probably going to be put to work quite a bit in this. So yeah, I think the ceiling is high for him in this one. The other side of the ball, just start literally your Detroit Lions. We don't have to talk about the top guys. Even Jamison Williams, I have as a wide receiver 2 this week. I got him at 24. I could argue you could push him higher. He's just a little more boomer bust and sometimes a little harder to trust. Sam Laporta, should be good to go. I think you can start him in this one. It's risky. He could completely do nothing for you, but Indianapolis giving up the 3rd most receptions to the position, the 6th most fantasy points. So I could still see him having a decent game.
The only question is, do you start Tim Patrick even? Do we go that far down? No, you don't. Don't do that to yourself.
No.
You can get excited about every single person. Get David Montgomery. I guess that's the only one. He could have been someone's RB3, supposedly. Yeah, and Sam Laporta, both those guys, get him in. Colts can stop nothing. It's going to be painful to watch on my behalf. All right, AJ, on to the next one.
Alrighty, next we have the Patriots going down to Miami, where Miami's favored by 7.5. Over under is 46.5. And a lot of players, I feel like when they're doing their pregame warm-ups and stuff, listen to music, they're probably jamming out to, rock, rap, different stuff like that. Drake May, his favorite musician to listen to warming up is Chris Stapleton.
I like that. I could get behind that.
That's hype country, at least. I thought you were going to say, Bach. Like, we're going to hit some white dude stereotype and just make us all feel bad. No, at least that's fine. We'll accept that.
I'll keep it short, but I went to the gym today, forgot my headphones. Not the most fun time at the gym. Just hear people grunting and breathing hard, including myself.
ASMR time. There you go, Steven.
All right, let's see here. Let's start with Miami, shall we? Well, we saw some life out of Tyreek Hill last week. He scored almost 20 fantasy points. I got me a little bit excited. I just don't think the ceiling is there like years past, but I think he's still a wide receiver 1. I've got him at 7th overall position this week. Patriots giving up the 10th most fantasy points to the position. They're giving up the most red zone targets. So I think Hill can have a decent one in this one. Tua, I got him as QB 13. You could argue he's somewhere between 13 and 17 this week. Patriots aren't great against the quarterback. Honestly, it's just kind of an average matchup for quarterbacks, but they are 7-point favorites, so they do expect Miami to score in this one. So I like Tua. Jalen Waddle, though, I'm just not there, Andrew. I just don't trust him. I'll wait to see it happen. Like, I still believe the guy's a good wide receiver. It's just not happening this year. So Dynasty, probably a good buy low. Jay, close your ears. And then Jonnu Smith, though. You can't bench a tight end who's been doing what he's been doing, scoring 28 fantasy points last week. I got him at my tight end 10. So honestly, everybody that owns him got him on the waiver wire. So that could include teams with better tight ends. But PFF actually loves this matchup. They got it a 9 out of 10 on their matchup rating. So I definitely think he's streamable.
Do we owe Arthur Smith an apology? Like, do we all have to go write a card to Arthur Smith for playing Jonnu Smith so much over Kyle Pitts last year?
Oh,
Arthur,
that's a good point.
You were right.
Good point. He wasn't like a second round pick back in the day, like I think 2017. He was a guy in Dynasty that I liked. I thought he would turn into more than he did. He had some moments both in Tennessee and New England. But yeah, I think he's just okay. But yeah, no, it's kind of funny you bring that up.
Yeah, he's just so many targets, so many yards to go with it. This is a tight end that you want to be starting the rest of the way. And no, you don't want to start Jalen Waddle. We are in the year 2024 where I'm telling you, every week the rest of the way right now, I would rather start Jonnu Smith than Jalen Waddle. And that kills me on the inside.
Man, that just, imagine hearing that, 6 months ago. That would be crazy.
Additionally, I don't know if we said it, Raheem Mostert, you can't play him. It's just like he's been moving out of the offense just so people have him. You can drop Raheem Mostert at this point. I'm not forcing the drop, but you probably could drop him if you need someone to start.
For sure. All right, other side of the ball, New England. Drake May, I heard this earlier today. I think he's averaging over 40 rushing yards per game. So he's getting you a really nice floor. Matchup sucks, though. The Dolphins have just been really good against quarterbacks. They give up the 3rd fewest points. And I keep thinking they haven't played a ton of great quarterbacks, but they just keep doing it. So I think Drake May could struggle a little bit in this one. It is in Miami. The over-under, not incredibly high. They're 7-point underdogs, so they're not expecting a ton of points from the Patriots. I have him as my QB 16. The one guy, I guess there's two guys I kind of like. I kind of like Ramondre Stevenson in this one. Miami giving up the ninth most fantasy points to the running back position. So I think, and he gets enough work and enough snaps that I think he can do enough to get you RB2 numbers. And then Hunter Henry, he's just getting targeted so much that he's a tight end 1 for me. I got him at tight end 7.
Hunter Henry, again, that's another guy I keep harping on every single week on our waivers every single week that I was allowed to because of owner percentage.
Yeah.
He has to be played. He's been phenomenal ever since Drake May took over, double digits after double digits after double digits. And in this economy for tight ends, you have to be playing that. Drake May is legit lifting this offense to being something fantasy relevant, and you need to pay attention, fantasy players.
Yep.
AJ, what you got next for us?
Alrighty, we have the Buccaneers going up to New York to play the Giants. The Bucks are favored by 6. Over under is 41.5. And with the change this week of Daniel Jones to Tommy DeVito, Drew Lock was kind of asked about the situation. He feels pretty snubbed. He was asked, didn't you think you'd be the one taking over for Jones? And he's like, yeah, that's a pretty good question. I'm still asking myself that same thing.
I was a little confused by it. Andrew, were you?
They paid him in the offseason. He wasn't on their team before, and they said, let me give you money so we can play you instead of Tommy DeVito. And they said, nah, we'll play Tommy Cutlets.
Is this like a marketing thing, do you think? Like, I honestly don't think there's a huge difference between the two. Like, they both are not great quarterbacks. But is this like a little bit, are we going to see that agent with the Italian mafia look on the sideline? Is this a little bit of is this some TV time kind of stuff?
I'm for it. Way more entertaining. Although Drew Lock's very entertaining himself. He looked terrible. I'm for it.
Yeah. All right, let's start with New York. Malik Neighbors, it feels like it's been forever since he's been considered this like great talent. We know he's a great talent, but it just feels like, doesn't it feel like it's been forever since we've seen him do something? I mean, he's got 10, 14, and 14 points his last 3 weeks. I feel like we're due. I'm just a little nervous with, not like Daniel Jones was great, but I'm a little nervous with the quarterback position. Having said all that, I've got him as my wide receiver 8, Andrew. The Tampa Bay Bucks, they are heavy favorites in this one, and their defense doesn't really stop wide receivers. They give up the 6th most points to the position, the 7th most receptions. So we know he should get targeted a lot. He's very efficient with those targets. He's an explosive wide receiver, so I like him. Now, this is solely matchup based. If you are in By-Geddon, I think you can take the dice and roll them on Tommy DeVito. Just if you're super desperate, Andrew. Reason Bucks give up the most points to the quarterback position. They give up the 5th most completions, the 4th most passing yards. So teams can throw on them, and he had last season some decent stat lines. What was it? Let me pull it up here. I got to go to 2023 here. He did have a 22-point game against Washington. Remember how bad Washington was last year? Their secondary, that's kind of Tampa this year, and he did put in a QB7 performance last year. So I'm not banking on a QB1 finish for him, but I think if you're super, super desperate, he can be played. Running back Tyrone Tracy, like him a lot. He's just getting all the work now. He's a good running back, averaging over 5 yards per carry. They're giving up the 5th most points to the running back position, and they're giving up a lot of receptions too. So hopefully he can get something done in the receiving game. I got him as my RB14. Slayton should be back in this one, which again could be good for DeVito as well. I'm not starting him, but just wanted to point that out for Tommy. I think Wan'Dale Robinson, I think he could make like a wide receiver 3/4 start in By-Geddon. I think he'll get a lot of targets too.
I mean, if you start Tommy DeVito, like you're gonna have a good time. Do the little Tommy Cutlets thing that we had to give a name to somehow because no one knew what it was, but everyone knew what it was. The little hand gesture for those listening on the podcast. Yeah, you can start Tommy DeVito in a Superflex league. You know you're getting 10 points because, to your point, Steven, he had 10 points more often than he did, and he had one start where he did not have double-digit points from what I'm seeing, and he played the whole game. That's crazy. It wasn't great games, but
I don't think he'll be terrible. Like, I'll give you a name game.
Oh gosh.
All right. Now I don't have him. I won't tell you have them ranked if you haven't looked. But would you say Tommy DeVito with literally bars pegged on just Tampa giving up points to every quarterback, or Sam Darnold where it's the opposite, where the Bears are giving up nothing?
It is absolutely still Sam Darnold. He has Justin Jefferson, T.J. Hawkinson, and Jordan Addison.
Hey, well, I mean Malik Neighbors. He's no slouch. All right, how about Will Levis?
Okay, now you have me on Tommy DeVito. You don't sell me on Will Levis. I'm always ready to bench Will Levis.
Jameis Winston. Tough matchup tonight against the Steelers.
Ooh, DeVito only because of weather.
Yeah. All right, I'll give you one. Let's see. One last one. Caleb Williams versus the Vikings.
I gotta go Caleb there. He's just got more weapons again, but that's closer than I would like it to be.
For the record, I have him ranked below all of those guys.
Yes.
So but I do think I don't think he'll burn you completely. I think there's a chance he does okay. And then lastly, Theo Johnson. I forgot to bring him up. I think he could be started too if you're desperate at tight end, which I think there are a lot of people this week that could be needing tight end help. The Bucks give up the 5th most fantasy points. They give up just top 5 numbers to every meaningful stat to tight end. So I think he, in a desperate situation, can be played. He's been serviceable. He's been okay the past couple weeks.
On the Buccaneers side of the ball, Baker, the man, he gets his guy back. Mike Evans should hopefully be back this week. Are you still willing to play Cade Otton, considering he's back?
I mean, do we kind of want to see it, right? Or I'm saying, see him not do it first before we pull him out of our lineups?
I agree. I think it's complementary roles between Evans and Otton.
Now, will he be getting 10 targets a game like we were seeing? I don't think that's probably the case. Maybe it drops a little bit, but the combination of that and that the matchup's actually not great. The Giants give up the fewest points to the position, the second fewest receptions, the fewest receiving yards, fewest touchdowns. So all of that does make me nervous, but Baker is just on fire this year. He looks like a different quarterback, so I'm not overly scared of it. I got Cade Otton as my tight end 8 this week. I think consensus has him closer to top 5. I just dropped him more because the matchup, not so much because of Mike Evans. And then Baker, I've got as my QB 11. I don't think he's going to go crazy in this one. I still think that the Giants defense can do, like, they're giving up the 6th fewest completions. They're giving up the 3rd fewest passing yards. Some of it is they've given up a ton of rushing points to quarterbacks this season. So it's a little deceiving on their fantasy points allowed. So I think Baker will be fine. I just don't know that he has a blow-up game in this one. I could be wrong. I don't think they'll need to score a ton in this one. Mike Evans, the Bucks are giving up the 14th fewest fantasy points to the position. So, but it doesn't matter. You still start him. I just have him more as like a back-end, mid-range wide receiver 2 this week. Not as high as I would typically have him. And then both running backs, I think they can both be started as RB2s.
Yep. Not much different for Tampa Bay off of what they normally are. AJ, next matchup.
Alrighty, next we have the Cowboys Commanders. The Commanders are favored by 10.5. Over under is 45.5. And this week I texted you guys that the Cowboys haven't won a home game this entire season. They actually haven't won one in 2024, and they won't be winning one this week. But I wanted to rattle off some teams that have won in Dallas this year. So we've got the Saints, the Ravens, the Lions, the Eagles, the Texans. We have Texas A&M, the U.S. and Canadian national soccer teams, and Jake Paul.
Jerry World, home to everyone but the Cowboys.
I like that. Oh, man. Andrew, you were full tilt on CeeDee Lamb last week. And then he was targeted 14 times. So where are you this week moving forward on CeeDee?
I think you can expect a whole bunch of volume yet again. I don't know how that game stayed competitive long enough for the pace of that game. It took forever. That game should have been 2.5 hours. It was like 3.5, almost 4.
The Texans kept passing when you would think they would be running more.
And they weren't even good. The first half, it was a darn close game. That was a close football game. I don't know who was going to win in the first half. So I do expect this one to favor the Commanders a lot more. I think there'll be less possessions. CeeDee Lamb, you have him wide receiver 11. I'm pushing him closer to 15. It's not absurd. But again, my whole point was CeeDee Lamb is not top 5 anymore. He's more towards 15 than he is 5.
Yeah, I got him at wide receiver 9, Andrew. I think I even moved him up this week, or compared to this morning. You know, Washington's not as bad as we thought they were going to be. But I do know last time he played Washington, he scored 35 fantasy points. Now, I'm not saying that's going to happen again, but I'm not worried about the matchup. I think CD does fine in this one. I think he gets enough volume. I'd have him ranked probably 2 or 3 if Dak was playing. So wide receiver 9, I think that's fair for him based on the volume we saw last week. Cooper Rush, he had a decent match or decent game last week, throwing for over 350 passing yards. I wouldn't bank on many quarterbacks to repeat that number regardless. Definitely not Rush. So I'm not getting him in my lineup in this one. Washington, they're kind of an average matchup. Rico Dowdle, he's still getting most of the work here. So I think he can be serviceable based on volume. And PFF actually likes the matchup for him. They got an 8 out of 10. I've got him as my RB27 just because I don't think the ceiling's all that high. I think he's going to get you at max like 12 points. And then Luke Schoonmaker, which he's in his second year. Is that correct? Am I correct on that, Andrew?
Let me double check it. Second or third, out of Michigan.
Do you know how old he is?
26 years old because I pulled up his page because I was looking at what year he was.
I was like, man, wasn't this? I thought he was a rookie last year. I feel like I remember hearing about him at the Senior Bowl last year, and I'm like, God, he's already 26 years old.
He's in his second year and he's 26 years old. They kept him a long time and to age up there in Michigan.
Well, I think I have to play him in a league. I'm desperate, so I want him to work out in this one. I just think that they'll be playing from behind. He had, what was it last week? 10 targets? No, that's not
10
what
targets.
I heard. Did he have 10 targets? Yeah, he had like an 18% target share or something. So I think there's a world where he gets targeted a bunch in this one also. He got 6 targets the last time Ferguson missed a game. Well, not counting this last week. So I think he could do something. I'm not expecting big things, but if you're desperate, I think he could do something.
Yeah, some guys that we maybe could talk about starting him over. Once you get to like Noah Gray, Josh Oliver, Jatavian Sanders is a questionable one. Push him up if you're desperate.
You know, I like the matchup for Sanders. My only worry is who's the other tight end they got there?
Tommy Tremble.
Yeah, I think he's supposed to be back. So I don't know if we see as much playing time for Sanders. So yeah, it's just tight end kind of sucks this week unless you've got some of the good guys. But like Theo Johnson, I brought him up. I like him better than Schoonmaker. Schoonmaker's literally a Hail Mary play.
Mm-hmm.
All right, who are they playing? Commanders. All right, Commanders. Jaden Daniels, he's cooled off quite a bit the last couple of weeks, but it's really hard to rank him any lower than top 5. I found myself going, how far down do I want to move him? Like I was tempted to rank, I did rank Justin Herbert over him, but like I had a hard time even dropping him below Patrick Mahomes. So I still got him as my QB4, Andrew. Dallas is giving up the 5th most fantasy points to the position. They're giving up the 5th most rushing yards also. We saw Lamar run all over them. I think that Jaden can run all over these guys. Also, Brian Thomas, he's a must start. I got him as my RB1. Dallas, you can just run all over Dallas. They are a top 5 matchup for running backs. And with the usage we've been seeing with Austin Eckler more recently, I think he's startable too. I've got him more as like a fringe RB2, RB3 in that area, but I definitely think he could be startable. I do want to ask you, Andrew, are you worried at all about Terry McLaurin after last week, or is that just a bad matchup?
This is what I thought Terry McLaurin could be at risk of every point earlier in the season. He was never getting insane volume. Like it was crazy efficiency, making great catches downfield. So he's fallen, I think, back into regression. However, in this matchup, I'm not worried about a thing. That's why I think Jaden Daniels, he's hurt. I think the ribs injury is stopping him from running. But with his arm alone against this bad Cowboys defense, I think he should still be fine.
Yeah. I mean, the worry, like you said, Terry McLaurin, he's had 2 games out of his last 3 where he's had less than 4 targets. So that is the worry. He's been saving you with touchdowns, other than last week where he had just the 2 fantasy points. But I still got him at wide receiver 12 because we saw a bigger sample size prior to that where he was very good. And then I think Zach Ertz, I got him at tight end 12. It's the Cowboys are giving up the top 10 numbers to tight ends in receiving touchdowns. So I think that there's a good chance that Zach could score in this one in the red zone.
Hunter Henry, Zach Ertz, the 2 guys who, if you've started them the entire season, we're going to look back at the end of the season. That dude was the tight end 7. That guy was the tight end 9. What a steal, undrafted.
Yeah, exactly.
All right, AJ, take us on over to one disgusting matchup.
Alrighty, we have the Chiefs Panthers. The Chiefs are favored by 10.5. Over under is 42.5. And a few weeks ago, Mahomes and Kelsey's homes were burglarized, and it turns out that it was related to a South American cartel.
Oh my God.
Yeah, that's insane. Because we've seen celebrities get robbed before, but this is This is crazy. Andy Reid, is he actually leading the cartel?
God, that's crazy.
I think it's Sky Moore.
It's Sky Moore back with a vengeance.
All right, let's start in Carolina. I think you have to be a little bit concerned with Chuba Hubbard with the arrival of Jonathan Brooks. He is supposed to be activated in this game, and the combination of that with the Chiefs giving up the fewest fantasy points and touches to the position, they're giving up the fewest yards to the position. That does concern me. They're giving up the third fewest touchdowns to the position. I just think this defense could be very stifling to Carolina. We have seen Chuba be good all season. He's an RB1, even though this team has been bad. But I think this is one of the better defenses they will face all season. Having said that, I've got Chuba Hubbard as my RB19. I'm not touching Jonathan Brooks in this one. I will wait and watch that thing happen. But if he's still on people's rosters, I don't recommend starting him. Obviously, we're not starting Bryce Young. About Bryce Young or Tommy DeVito, did we decide on that one?
No, but I'll go Tommy DeVito.
Same.
Absolutely.
I think I have Bryce Young as my last ranked quarterback this week, just because I just don't love the matchup. Their implied point total is only 16.5. More reason I'm not that optimistic on Chuba Hubbard. The wide receivers, I don't really want to play any of these guys either. Adam Thielen is expected to be back, which just muddies it up even more so. So I am worried a little bit about the wide receivers. I feel like I want them off my roster, or not off my roster, out of my starting lineup this week. Kansas City giving up the 13th fewest points to the position and the 4th fewest receiving yards. And then, like we had talked about Jatavian Sanders, if Tommy Tremble, which I think he is playing, but if for some reason he's not, I do think Sanders, that's the one area we've seen the Chiefs week after week, they get beat by the tight end position. So I think there's a matchup there he could exploit as like a desperation play.
Sanders has just looked really good when he's on the field, so I would like to think that he has earned his way into playing. They use him in some unique, cool ways. He lines up in the backfield a decent amount.
Yeah.
So I would like to think Sanders is going to be playing his fair share of snaps again. But to your point, it is something worth noting and a reason to drop him below some questionable decisions.
Yeah, and it is. I'm just reading it right now. Tommy Tremble is off the injury report. So I'm probably not starting Sanders. I could see this tight end thing being a little bit of a mess.
There is absolutely a league where I'm starting Jatavian Sanders. Steven, let's just say there's this guy who hypothetically has to start Jatavian Sanders. Are you starting Jatavian Sanders against the Chiefs or Isaiah Likely?
I'll go Likely. Yeah. I've seen some good things from Likely this season. It's a bad matchup. But yeah, I would go Likely.
Jatavian Sanders or Noah Gray?
I would actually, you know what? I have them back to back in my rankings, but that was before I knew Tommy Tremble might be playing. I would probably bump up Noah Gray. Carolina, also one of the worst teams at stopping tight ends.
Completely unrelated note, I might have just picked up Isaiah Likely and dropped Jatavian Sanders.
I like it.
All right, the Chiefs side of the ball, Steven.
Oh, yeah. We got to talk about both teams usually.
It's getting sketchy. We're talking about running backs where it's weird. This is about to get real freaky in Kansas City.
This is. I'm still, honestly, I have them ranked back to back in my rankings, Andrew. It feels like a cop-out. I've got Kareem Hunt, I think, one spot higher at RB24, and then I got Pacheco at 23 and 24. Just because the matchup is so good, I think both of these guys actually could be playable in this one. We're not going to see the ceiling like we saw with Pacheco earlier in the year or Hunt later in this season. But Carolina, PFF has it as like the best matchup on paper. And stats back it up. The Carolina Panthers giving up the most points to the position. They're giving up the third most touches, second most total yards, the most touchdowns. So one of these guys is running in a touchdown, potentially multiple. They both could be running in multiple touchdowns. So I think based on that, they are startable. And then Mahomes, obviously, you're starting him. He's my QB5 of the week. Kelsey's my tight end 1. Wide receivers, it's getting a little bit messy, but I think you could start Hopkins. I think you can start Worthy. I'm not looking to start Juju, though.
I think I will start Kareem Hunt. I think I'm trying to do everything I can to not start Isaiah Pacheco. This is the same injury that Tank Dell had to deal with all season, that Mark Andrews had to deal with all season, that Tony Pollard dealt with last season. I do not want to start Pacheco unless I have to.
Yeah, you just have to point out how good the matchup is. So if people held on to Pacheco for this long, they might need to start him. That's the only thing.
Yep, it stinks, but great matchup, so there's some hope out there.
And start the Chiefs defense, too.
Yes. AJ, we got another blowout coming our way. What's the next game?
Alrighty, we have the Titans Texans, where the Texans are favored by 7.5. The over under is 40.5. And last week, Nick Westbrook-Akine ripped off another touchdown for 98 yards, but that is not the Titans' longest touchdown. That belongs to the king himself, Derrick Henry, who has a 99-yard rushing touchdown.
I believe was that against the duo-toned Jaguars helmet, or was that their more modern jerseys? Because I know it was against the Jaguars.
I don't know, but the Jaguars deserve it for wearing those terrible jerseys. Their switch up this year, their new jersey this year, even worse than anything they ever had.
You know, Andrew, I don't know. I saw a meme the other day that said, many people probably don't remember this, but back in the day on Thursday Night Football, the Titans and Jaguars used to play every Thursday night. Because it used to feel like that. It felt like there was always these like Jaguars-Titans games on Thursday Night Football, and they were always awful.
Constantly hated it, but who are you starting in this matchup, Steven?
In this matchup, all right, so Houston, Joe Mixon, man, that guy just looks unleashed. Love him in this one. Actually, I take that back. I don't love him in this one because of the matchup, but they're 7.5-point favorites. They're going to own this game. He gets all the work. On paper, doesn't look as good, but I'm not worried about it. I think he has a good game. I've got him as my RB3 on the week. CJ Stroud, God, he's worrying me a little bit. Although he did have a touchdown that was negated by an illegal shift on the first play of the game that would have been an 80-yarder last week, but I digress. He's my QB15, though. Titans giving up the fewest completions and fewest passing yards to the position. That's kind of where he makes his hay. They giving up actually a lot in the rushing game. He doesn't do that. So lower on CJ Stroud. Wide receivers, not a great matchup for the wide receivers in general. Titans giving up the fourth fewest points to the position. This is a game they won't have to throw a lot. And having said that, I still have Nico as my wide receiver 4 because they still play 4 quarters of football. He could get you wide receiver 1 numbers in a quarter in this one. So still got to play Nico. Tank Dell I'm a little lower on, though. I got him as my wide receiver 30. Just matchup's not great. And then Dalton Schultz, mid-range tight end too. Very hard to throw him in your lineup, though.
CJ Stroud is helped out by L'Jarius Sneed, not going to be able to play in this one.
Thank you.
And what really stinks about the Titans is it's a good defense, but then also the offense of the Titans sucks so much and keeps turning the ball over. The other team gets good field position. They don't have to go many yards to score a touchdown. So if your guy doesn't get the touchdown, probably going to be disappointed in this one.
I did not realize that about Sneed. So knowing that, I would bump those guys up a little bit. I mean, I've already got Nico way high, but maybe you bump Tank Dell and CJ Stroud up a little bit.
Will you play a Titans player?
I'll play Calvin Ridley. That's really the only one I'm actually kind of excited to play him. I got him at wide receiver 21 this week. Houston giving up the 10th most fantasy points to the position. We just saw CeeDee Lamb get targeted 14 times. Wouldn't be shocked if we saw Calvin Ridley get targeted 14 times this week. Any wide receiver getting targeted 10 times should be started. I don't care how bad the team is. So I think he at least hits 10. So yes, starting Calvin Ridley. Not excited about the running backs, though. You can start Tony Pollard. He's my RB21. Houston, though, they're tough against running backs, give up the 5th fewest points to the position. They give up the 9th fewest total yards. So not excited to start him.
The only thing that could save us and make Pollard a really good start, or at least I think a good start, I think a plus start, above average start. Tony Pollard is probably the lead back because Tyjae Spears still is not practicing on Thursday with his concussion. So with Pollard being the lead back, he will get the volume to be more startable than like a guy like Rico Dowdle. I would much rather start Tony Pollard than Rico Dowdle.
No, I get that. Yeah. But there's some people that I think they go back and forth with Pollard. I had some people last week, I recommended him as a sit, and they're like, you don't sit Tony Pollard. I'm like, well, in certain matchups you can now that Tyjae Spears is healthy. Without Tyjae, yes, you start Tony Pollard every week. But depending on your roster this week, it's just not a great matchup.
Start Tyjae, start Pollard because no Spears most likely. No one else. No thank you, Will Levis. Just go back to eating mayo. AJ, you got an AFC West showdown.
Yes, sir. We have the Broncos taking on the Raiders, where the Broncos are favored by 6. Over under is 41.5. And growing up, Brock Bowers attended Redwood Middle School in Napa, California, which ironically is where the Raiders held their training camp every year. But it didn't really matter because his family was 49.
Brock Bowers could have started on the Las Vegas Raiders while in high school.
He probably could have. God, AJ, I don't know where you find these stats, but I love them. So Brock Bowers, yeah, I think you could probably safely start him. It also helps that Denver's actually not great against the tight end. They're not as bad as they've been in years past, but they're giving up the 10th fewest receptions to the position this year. We know he likes to receive the ball, Andrew. He had, 14 receptions last week, targeted 16 times. So, yeah, start Brock Bowers. Other than that, I think Myers can be started. I think last time that they played Denver, he actually had a decent game. Let me double check that. He had 13 fantasy points last time they played Denver, so I think he can be started, even though it's a tough matchup. He won't be like Patrick Surtain the whole game. So I think he can be played. Just know Denver is giving up the third fewest points to the position. Other than that, I don't even know who's playing at running back this week. They got a lot of injuries. They got concussions. They got bad Zamir White, who's injured, who shouldn't even be on an NFL roster, it looks like. So I don't know. Unless we see, I'm blanking on his name, Abdullah. If he's like the only guy that's healthy, maybe in a desperate situation, you could put him in your lineup. Denver is giving up the third most receptions to the position. So we could see him getting a lot of receptions. Are we going to see a Dylan Labe sighting in this one, Andrew?
I think that's what the word is right now, is a Dylan Lobby. Dylan
Lobby?
I had it before you said it. Laube. Dylan Laube looks like he actually could be the lead guy this week for the Raiders, but hands up, we don't know yet. We'll have to wait and see. To be honest, I don't really want to play whoever is the starting running back.
No. Madison's missed a practice. White, he's still sidelined. Abdullah, yeah, they don't even have an update.
Let's do it this way. If Alexander Madison plays and he's the only guy, are you going to play him?
He's not playing. No, I'm probably not.
If Zamir White is the only guy, are you going to play him?
Either? He's not playing
if
either.
Amir Abdullah is the only guy, are you going to play him?
I actually might.
Okay, if Dylan Laube is the only guy, are you going to play him?
I probably would, and here's why. As a desperation play, it's like a flex. Denver is giving up the most receptions to the position, and those are both receiving backs. They could get you an okay floor. They could get you 10 fantasy points.
Yeah, it's in Gardner Minshew likes to check down the ball. Both Abdullah and Laube are passing game specialists. Get away from the Raiders. Disgusts me. Your Broncos, Steven.
Oh, man.
Quick plug. If you pay attention and you play Dynasty football or just want to know about rookies, listen to our off-season content, because Jesse Preston and his beautiful bald head, he was calling out Bo Nix is the guy we need to pay attention to, and I thought he was like fine, but you got to watch our content because, man, he nailed it.
You know, he did. He hit that one out of the park. He also said Anthony Richardson would not be good, which
he was wrong about that.
We'll see.
He's great now.
No, he could turn the corner. But Bo Nix, the PFF has it as a perfect 10 out of 10 on their rating scale. Bo Nix, Andrew, I haven't looked. I looked before waivers cleared. Bo Nix was still only 60% rostered in redraft leagues, and he is the QB 7 on the year, which just, how long does it take people to figure it out that he's actually playing really well? I think the thing with Nix is I thought he'd be an accurate quarterback. I didn't know he would run as much as he's been running. Like, I knew he was a decent runner, but not to the level he has been. Now, I will say the last 2 games, he has 0 total rushing yards. So he had -5 against Kansas City, and he only had 5 last week against Atlanta. Last week, it didn't matter. He had his best performance of the season. He scored, second best, I should say. He scored 28 fantasy points. As I'm looking at his game logs, note to self, just play the NFC South more often, because those seem to be some really good games for quarterbacks. He was a top 12 quarterback in all of those. I've got him as my QB6 this week, though.
Must start.
Great. Must start. Yep. Cortland Sutton, not as great of a matchup for him. I had a hard time figuring out where I wanted to rank him. I feel like he could be anywhere between wide receiver 12 and wide receiver 28, just because the Raiders giving up the 7th fewest points to the positions. Teams haven't really had to throw on them a lot. They are 6.5-point favorites. They probably won't need to use him a ton. Raiders giving up the 3rd fewest receiving yards to the position. So I have him ranked at wide receiver 18. I kind of cut the difference between a wide receiver 1 and a wide receiver 3. So that's where I've got him. Running backs, Andrew, I don't even want to give people advice. Will you tell me which running back to start for the Broncos?
It's still Javonte Williams, but I'm not actually wanting to play him. Sean Payton is a mean man, and he wants to see us have no fun starting their running backs. I am actually forced by Mageddon to start Javonte Williams in a league, and I have Estimate and Williams on that team. I made sure in waivers I had both. And I'm starting Williams, but I don't want to. I have to.
God, one attempt versus Kansas City. And it's not like last week. He only had 9 rushing attempts, but he was actually very efficient with them, almost at 7 yards per carry.
And the clear lion's share of the snap. I mean, 50%, but they have such a committee that it was a lion's share.
Yeah, and I think that in this one he should be used a lot too. They should win this one easily, which is not something I would have thought at the beginning of the season. I think both of these running backs actually could get a decent amount of play if that holds true. If they control the game and they get a big lead, I think both these running backs, I think Estime more later in the game could do something. Having said that, I do like Williams a little bit better. I got him as my RB28. I got Estime as my RB32. So not excited to start him, but I think you could in certain situations.
I agree. AJ, we have an incredible matchup from an insane playoff game last year. What's the next one for us?
Alrighty, we have the 49ers taking on the Packers, where the Packers are favored by 3. Over under is 47.5. And it's kind of known that George Kittle is a big wrestling fan, and his first down celebration is actually a taunt that was inspired by his favorite wrestler.
Yeah, he looks like a WWE guy, like the hair and everything. It's stringy, it's gross, it's built for it. I think that's where he'll end up whenever he retires.
Yeah, sorry, AJ. I was looking at something that came through. Were you talking about George Kittle? When I heard,
no, ignore AJ. He's not. We don't. That's just what we do now to our friends,
No,
Steven.
I apologize.
No,
something distracted me.
Read the note to the class. No, go talk some football.
Yeah, no, he does. He does look like he looks like the Undertaker. When I see him, I think I don't know if you guys remember the Undertaker, but that's who he reminds me of. All right, 49ers. Christian McCaffrey. I ranked him as RB1 just because he's Christian McCaffrey, but it's not the greatest matchup on paper. The Packers, they give up. They're more of like an average matchup. But he is Christian McCaffrey. He is superhero. Did he have, Andrew? Were you talking about this earlier this morning? 90% of the snaps.
Yeah, they just said, "Oh, you had an Achilles near tear. Oh, let's give you all of the work."
I know. It's just they don't care. I don't know why they do it quite that way. I feel like you could prolong McCaffrey's career a little bit, but Shanahan doesn't care. He just wants to win right now. So he's my RB1. He's going to get a ton of work. I don't love Brock Purdy as much this week. The Packers, they're giving up the 8th fewest points to the position. Weather could be an issue in this one. It is on the road. The Packers always seem to play, and I'm not even just talking about these current Packers. Just historically, the Packers seem to play the 49ers well, especially when they're at home. So I could see this one being a bit rough, especially these coaches know each other so well.
Purdy's also beat up and wasn't guaranteed to play in this one. It looks like he will, but he's got a shoulder injury.
I guess I missed that. Yeah, he was limited today. I'm sure he'll play, but that's a guy that he looks like the wrong hit takes him out of the game. So that does make me a little bit nervous. Now, Juwan Jennings. So on paper, it doesn't look that good. PFF loves this matchup. He might be their wide receiver 1 now. He's looked amazing. I have him as a back end wide receiver 1, just based on what we've seen, the kind of volume he's been getting. Is that too high, Andrew?
I don't think it's absurd to start him over someone like, I don't know, the aforementioned CeeDee Lamb. Actually, that is a little bit crazy, but it's darn close. Let me play a little name game.
Back to back in my rankings right now.
Don't look at your rankings. Lamb. Gut feeling. Okay, I won't say George Pickens. Okay. That was my first one. Zay Flowers or Juwan Jennings?
Juwan.
A DK Metcalf versus the Cardinals or Juwan Jennings?
Juwan. Terry
McLaurin versus the Cowboys or Juwan?
Juwan.
I agree. And that's a lot of big time names that he's ahead. Yeah. He is their wide receiver 1. Debo's been looking terrible.
Is that what the kids say? He is him?
He is him. He's had, in the games where he's played 85% or more snaps, 46.5 points, 16.5 points, 25 points. You have to start him.
Yep. I also think Deebo Samuel's good in this one too. I know everybody's panicking on him. I think he should be good in this one. I'm having him as more of a mid-range wide receiver too. Like I said, not on paper, it's not that great, but I think they'll both be fine. PFF loves the matchup for both. George Kittle, he's a every week start, so I got him as my tight end 4 on the week. And then Green Bay side of the ball, are we going to get a good? Oh, I guess last week we did get good Jordan Love, correct? Yeah, he had like 20 fantasy points. I'm thinking of the previous 2 weeks. Jordan Love, this one, they're at home, so that makes me like him a little bit more. But San Francisco is giving up the 10th fewest points to the position. I've got him as a a high-end QB2, though. He's not a QB1 for me this week. Josh Jacobs, that guy's looked amazing lately. I got him as my RB9. A little bit tougher matchup, but I'm not too worried about it. Wide receivers, man, it is whack-a-mole with these guys. I don't trust really any of them. I trust Jaden Reed the most. We saw Christian Watson be the guy last week. We've seen games where Dubs was the guy for a spurt. We even saw Wicks earlier in the season. It's pretty much just Reed, though, right? Is that the only one we kind of trust, Andrew?
Reed's the only one that I'm like, yep, starter, normal, go with it. Although Christian Watson, with what he did last week, he's earning more and more of the snaps. I'm trying not to relapse and get back in on the Christian Watson drug. But I do think he is a sneaky good start this week if you need a fill-in and you're chasing points.
Oh, okay. Yeah. He's one of those guys that at times looks like one of the best wide receivers in the league, but so many times he doesn't.
Yep.
Like the last week against Chicago, like I just said, Chicago is one of the toughest matchups you can have. And he only caught 4 passes, but every time he was taking them for a third of the field. So I don't know. He's a good wide receiver at times. I see your point. I think he could be one of those. Could have some big plays in this one.
Wide receiver 3, boom bust. Wide receiver 4 territory. Not a guaranteed starter.
Hey, but we did say to sell Tucker Kraft. We are going to be right on that one, right?
I actually did sell Tucker Kraft as we were saying it. So yes.
Yeah, he had 0 points last week, just targeted once. I could see this week going very similarly. San Francisco giving up the 6th fewest to the position, the 3rd fewest receiving yards.
Still a very startable tight end, though. Like, over the disgustingness of Theo Johnson and what else were we talking about? Jatavian Sanders. He's still a tier above that.
I would start him over them. I've got him as my tight end 13. So as much as I'm ripping on him not doing well, it's hard to, with this offense, it's hard to rank him too far down.
Exactly. Plus, it's a great matchup. Not like in terms of against the tight end, but a lot of points, good football, hopefully scores a touchdown. Yep. AJ, the NFC West matchup we got next.
Alrighty, we have the Cardinals taking on the Seahawks, where Vegas thinks it's a coin flip favoring Cardinals by 1. Over under is 47.5. And Steven, I know you probably don't play video games too much anymore, but we've talked earlier in the season about how Kyler Murray likes his Call of Duty. And so I was taking a look, and you can actually look, the company that made Call of Duty is Activision, and you can look up people's accounts and see how many hours somebody has played. I didn't have to do it. Somebody did it for me. But in the last Call of Duty game, Kyler Murray recorded 1,328 hours of gameplay, or roughly 55 days.
Wow. That was a terrible game, too. No one played that except for Kyler Murray.
Oh, really?
Yeah. It was a notoriously awful game.
I'm curious. I bet some of my hours back in the day were pretty high, but thank God they didn't have that. It'd be depressing to go back and look at some of those numbers. But all right, we'll explain some things. Well, Kyler Murray, he actually has been decent this season, despite having what was looking like a really rough schedule. That, schedule, that's a fluid situation. The schedule's actually loosened up for him a little bit. He had 28 fantasy points last week against the Jets. Jets aren't stopping a lot of players lately. That defense is supposed to be good. He had 28 versus them. Yeah, I think so too. But Kyler Murray's been top. He's been over 20 points in 4 out of his last 5 games. He just had that stinker against Chicago. But yeah, I like him this week at Seattle. I got him as my QB7 in a game that decent over-under in this one. James Conner must start. Seattle giving up near top 10 numbers to the running back position. I don't even need to mention Trey McBride. You start him every week. Wide receivers I like a lot in this one. Well, I should say I like Marvin Harrison a lot in this one. He's my – actually, I'm not – I don't have him ranked nearly as high as I should. I think there's a big tier between 12 and 23. I've got him at 12 and 24. I got him at 23, which feels a little bit low right now, so I'd have to go back and look. But on paper, the matchup looks pretty good to me, so I do like Marvin Harrison. You got to have him in your lineup.
Start your studs in Arizona. James Conner should have an absolutely great game. This is a phenomenal matchup for him, so make sure you are getting him in there and probably in DFS as well. So not too many questions on the Cardinals side of the ball. The Seahawks, though. What are your thoughts there?
Seahawks, I got Geno Smith, because this team is passing so much. Like, he feels like an every week start, even in bad matchups. Like, I didn't like him as much last week. And it's not like he did amazing last week, but he did decent against San Francisco last week. He is, let's see,
As a pure pocket passer, he's been incredibly reliable. He's been under double digits just once, which that's not like some crazy number to hit as a quarterback, but
Yeah.
a lot of pocket passers will miss that in his tier of quarterback.
He basically gets you a minimum 15 points every week. His ceiling hasn't been that high. He hasn't gone over 22 fantasy points in any game. And, like you said, historically, he doesn't really go much over that. Like if you look, it's always between 15, 22 fantasy points, somewhere
He
in that
runs
ballpark.
he doesn't run in. The Seahawks run in all of their touchdowns.
Yeah, they do. It's weird for a team that passes as much as they do. He hasn't been passing quite as much lately. I mean, in the beginning of the season, he had like multiple 50 passing attempt games. Honestly, the last time they played when they played San Francisco a couple weeks ago, he had 52 passing attempts. It kind of just depends on how the game goes in this one. I got him as my QB 10. It's an average matchup. The Cardinals defense actually is pretty decent against quarterbacks. Kenneth Walker, though, definitely starting him. Cardinals giving up the 7th most points to the running back position. PFF loves it. They got it as a 9 out of 10 on their matchup scale. Playing him, playing DK Metcalf. You have to play Jackson Smith and Jigbo with what we've been seeing recently. That guy's getting he's the number 1 receiver, I think, on the team right now, at least from an NFL perspective and a target perspective. So, yeah, you're playing him. That's about it, though. I'm not really looking to start any other Seahawks.
JSN, I would say, is like the NFL wide receiver 1 for this team. It's not like he's the guy.
Sorry, I misspoke that. He's just getting targeted the most right now on this team.
Yeah, it's very, very stuff. He goes to him on scrambles whenever Geno has to move, which is often he looks for JSN first, it kind of feels like. And luckily, this offensive line stinks. So JSN, a good floor play. I don't think we'll keep seeing these 100-yard games.
Yeah, he just a couple weeks ago, he had 13 targets. That was obviously without DK Metcalf. Last week, with DK Metcalf back, he still got 11 targets. So volume has been there for him. Again, this team's passing a lot.
AJ, hit us with another NFC matchup.
Alrighty, we have the Eagles-Rams. The Eagles are favored by 3. Over-under is 48.5. And the Eagles will be traveling 2,400 miles for this game,
yes.
Steve.
Wait, we're supposed to get that. Oh, yeah, Seattle was at home. All right. I love it when you at least one per game. It surprised me one of these times, AJ, with a really short one. Like the Ravens playing Washington or something. Like it doesn't always have to
make
be
that
long.
happen.
Yeah.
Steven gets childishly excited whenever he hears about it. Like, you should have seen his face. If you're watching on YouTube, you got it. He just lit up. He's looking around. What's the number?
Yeah. I love that stuff. I'm just a geek for stupid stuff. All right, let's see. Eagles. You don't talk about, although, okay. Obviously, you're starting Hurts. You're starting Barkley. You're starting A.J. Brown. Dallas Goedert, I think you can start in this one. The Rams, not very good against the tight end position. They are a top 10 unit to attack. I got him as my tight end 11 this week. But Devonta Smith, we panicking at all on him, Andrew? He has, let me pull it up, back-to-back games under 7 fantasy points. Just a few weeks before that, he got you not even 1 fantasy point, almost 0. So, we panicking on him a little bit?
I've heard some Devonta Smith discourse. No, on the season, we're not panicking on him. It's the NFL. Everything's a micro sample. It's only 18-week season, and this is just a bad stretch. However, he's probably not playing this week. Still hasn't practiced, not even in limited fashion with a hamstring. So not even going to get to answer that, which means bump up Dallas Goedert even more.
Thank you. Yeah, sorry, people. I did not have that one pulled up as that he was not going to play, but yeah, you're correct. He did.
I will say in the future, once he's back, I'm still fully in. Nothing's changed. He's still a great player.
Yeah. All right. Well, yeah, bump up, like you said. That makes me I might move Goddard up a couple more spots on this one. All right. Let's see. Next one.
Rams
we still got to talk about the
Rams. You got your mind fogged up with the mileage. That's where you felt like we had talked forever just because the mileage was running through your head. LA Rams, who you playing?
That must be it. I'm playing the wide receivers. Now, here's the thing. Philly has been really stifling against wide receivers lately. But Andrew, I kind of feel like with the Rams, that stuff never matters because Sean McVay is a mastermind at moving these guys around and getting them in situations. He doesn't just leave them out on an island. He doesn't do like Bengals head coach where they're just running, on the same side of the field. They're not in motion. So
that's what the Commanders do too, and that's why they got stumped.
Yep. So I do like Cooper Kupp and Puka Nacua in this one. In a game where they're going to be chasing points, they are underdogs in this one. I got them at my wide receiver 5 and 6 on the week. And then Kyren Williams, he's been struggling a lot lately, and I would not be shocked if he struggles again in this one. Philly giving up the 6th fewest fantasy points to the position, giving up the 5th fewest touches. I've got him at RB11. I think a lot of consensus still has him ranked higher than that. I wouldn't even be shocked if he finishes worse than that. He's still getting most of the snaps, but it's not been as great as it was a couple weeks ago. We did see a little less of him last week, and the volume just hasn't been there like it was earlier in the season. Now that they got the receivers back, they don't have to rely on him as much. So I'm a little bit nervous about him.
The volume wasn't there last week. It's still mostly been there, but no, this is a really tough matchup. You still have to start him. He's still top 15 just because of volume.
And he's a good player.
To the receivers, they're going to be in motion, so it'll be better than what we saw from the Commanders. You still have to start both of them. This makes me think Cooper Kupp will be the better of the two this week, just because Quinyon Mitchell is absolute shutdown corner, or Cooper DeJean on the other side's been pretty good this year, and that's going to be Puka's problem. That won't be Kupp's problem. So I do think Kupp will have the better of the two games. You're starting both of them. Don't worry about it at all.
Oh, for sure. Matthew Stafford, though, I'm not as excited to start. Philadelphia giving up the 5th fewest points. He doesn't run. They're giving up the 2nd fewest passing yards to the position. So, we can say to start a receiver and not their quarterback. And I think this is one of those situations where I'm not expecting big numbers from Stafford as far as yards or touchdowns. Doesn't mean that the receivers don't catch a lot of passes, though.
That being said, I do think he is startable, but it's not a great matchup. That must be known. The reason I think they give up very few points is because the Eagles are just a really good defense. We do expect the Rams to score some 48.5 point over under 23 implied points. That does mean Stafford should score some touchdowns, but not a good one. I like where you have him ranked.
Him or Tommy DeVito?
I'm starting him over Tommy DeVito.
I just had to. I had to.
Thanks for the callback, AJ. Monday Night Football. We got a good one. Good work, NFL. Claps to you.
Alrighty. Steve, I'm going to need you to stay seated for this one because we have another Inglewood game where the Ravens are taking on the Chargers. Ravens are favored by 3. Over-under is 50.5. And the Ravens will be traveling 2,331 miles.
Oh, Chargers. Say it slower and again. Say it one more time. How many miles?
This game's over. It's over before it started.
How many miles, AJ?
2,331. Now, I'll be honest, I had to pull up a map when I was looking at this because, I had just looked at the Philly traveling out to LA. And if you would have asked me which is farther east, Philadelphia or Baltimore, I would have told you Baltimore 10 out of 10 times. It's just a little farther west, though.
Because, the coastline is like a diagonal, and Philly's further north.
Weird.
History teacher.
There's another one. What is it? Reno, Nevada is further west than Los Angeles. Go figure.
That's crazy. Steven, talk football.
All right, let's talk football. We're playing Chargers and the Ravens. Let's see, Baltimore. Let's start with them. It's a tough matchup. This defense, first of all, Baltimore hasn't been as explosive lately. They've had some tough matchups, so they've been slowed down a little bit. I wanted to rank Lamar lower, and then I was like, nah, you just can't. I don't have him as my QB1, but my computer wouldn't even let me go beyond 2. I was like, let's go to 3 or 4. Nope, it just pulled him right back up. So he's my QB2 on the week. Chargers are a tougher matchup, though. So I just don't think we necessarily see a 40-point game from Lamar, but he'll probably still get you close to 20. Another tough matchup for Derrick Henry. I don't know if you saw, I posted the other day, Andrew, but remember I had mentioned, sell high. You could possibly sell high on Derrick Henry about a month ago. He's an RB15 over that time period because the Ravens are just playing a lot of tough defenses, especially against the run. This is another one of those. The Chargers giving up the 3rd fewest points to the position. Derrick Henry scoring a touchdown. That's inevitable. But I wouldn't be surprised if Derrick Henry has another one of those games where it's a touchdown and 30 yards or 40 yards. So I'm not expecting big numbers from him. I think he gets you 10 to 14 points in this one. But having said that, because he can score touchdowns at any point and he can house it at any time, he's my RB7 on the week. Zay Flowers, you'd asked about him earlier. I got him as my wide receiver 17 on the week. The Chargers are giving up a lot of red zone targets, but that's not something that we necessarily will see benefit Zay Flowers. They're giving up the 8th fewest receptions to wide receivers in the league. So I'm a little bit lower on him than I typically would be. Also a little bit lower on Mark Andrews. I got him as my tight end 15. Chargers giving up the fewest receiving yards, fewest red zone targets to tight ends, and they are giving up the 12th fewest fantasy points.
So I didn't expect to find this whenever I was just kind of popping through game logs. Little bit of fraud watch for the Chargers defense. We saw them get exposed last week. And to be noted for Derrick Henry, I was just checking. They're 14th in stopping rushing efficiency. So very middle of the road stopping the run. They've been good at stopping the pass. Here's the teams they've played. Bengals put up 27. But before that, in that good stretch, they played the Titans, the Browns, the Saints, the Cardinals, the Broncos. Mind you, that's not actually a phenomenal offense. They're ranked 20th. The Chiefs, the Steelers, with Justin Fields, the Panthers, and the Raiders. This might not be as bad of a matchup as we thought. And that's something to note for who the teams are going to play coming up. Now, they've been good, but man, that's crazy, the schedule they've been able to run through.
Yeah, well, what was their record last year?
There's a reason. Absolute hot garbage, so it makes sense.
They did change coaches for a reason.
They got a top 5 pick.
No, but that's some good stuff. That's some good info to throw out here that, the matchups maybe haven't been as good. And Vegas does have this with a 50.5 point over-under, so maybe it's going to be a little more explosive. Now, part of that has to do with the fact that the Ravens on defense can't really stop anybody. But they do have the Ravens at 26 and 3/4, implied points. I don't have the all of the implied points pulled up in front of me, but I got to imagine that's near the top. So, like typically, they're expecting a lot of points from Lamar and the Ravens. Let's go over to the Chargers. Let me pull them up real quick.
Justin Herbert's been phenomenal lately. Are you willing to play him in this one?
Of course I'm willing to play him. It's just how high do I rank him? I got him as my QB3, Andrew. So yes, I have him one spot below Lamar Jackson. He's actually been running a decent amount lately too. He had what did he have? 65 rushing yards last game. The game before that, he had 32.
All right, and he's juking guys out there. He's not just running in a straight line.
I think this guy could be Josh Allen if he actually ran more. He's not as big as he's just as tall as Josh Allen. He might be actually taller, but not as thick, but he's just as athletic. I just wish we'd see more of that. Ravens giving up the most completions, passing yards to the position, the third most fantasy points. He's going to be able to throw all over against them. So love him this week. Love Ladd McConkey. I got him as my wide receiver 11. He's looked really good. Ravens giving up the most points to the wide receiver position. J.K. Dobbins, though, I think last week, he saved you with that long touchdown at the end of the game. He was doing nothing up until that point. I think this could be a similar one. Ravens are actually good against the running back position, giving up the 10th fewest fantasy points to the position. They're actually giving up a lot of receptions. I don't know how many balls he actually catches in this one. So I'm way lower on Dobbins than I would typically be. He's my RB20 on the week. Other receivers, Quentin Johnson, I think you could play him. I think he's got that big play potential. I think he can score you a touchdown. I tried, Andrew, underdog, love underdog, but they annoyed me last week because I was trying to, on the Monday night game, pick him. I think I had a prop for Herbert, and then I tried to pick his touchdown line, and it wouldn't let me. And then he scores a touchdown. But I could see him scoring a touchdown in this one, so I like him. Will Dissly, I got him as my tight end 6. Is that too high?
He's got over a 20% target share this year since like week 5, I think is the line. It's crazy.
Yeah, I think he's definitely startable. I tried to trade for him in a league, wasn't able to do so. Tried to add him in waivers on another league, wasn't able to do so. So I'm hoping he doesn't do as good because I'm probably playing him in one. But I do think he will. And then Josh Palmer, I think I'm even gonna mention him. I think as a desperation play, I think he could even do something in this one. That's how bad the secondary has been for the Ravens. And this Chargers offense looks a lot better. They're passing a lot better. So I think this whole offense could do well, other than the running backs.
I'm with you. It's a great one for Monday Night Football and one that will have so many fantasy implications. And that's why we're here to cover it for you. And we got through them all. It's a shortened week. We got a slightly shortened pod, even though it still runs long as always, but we did it. Thank you guys for tuning into the Fantasy Guides podcast. Hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, hit that follow button. I mentioned Dynasty content. Steve and I are already stirring on it.
Can't wait. I know.
Make sure you're tuning it in. It'll be on YouTube. It'll be on all the places where you get yourself a podcast. And we truly do it better than anyone else out there. Get you a weekly season guide and eventually a little dynasty guide there from fantasyguides.com for less than the price of a large pizza. Follow the page on Instagram, X, TikTok, everywhere at Fantasy
Blue
Guides.
Sky. We're even on Blue Sky now.
Blue Sky, that's a thing. Yeah, it's a little butterfly. Don't understand it. Still haven't gotten it because I'm waiting for it to die out.
Oh, I pulled it up. It looks just like Twitter to me.
It's literally the same thing. They completely ripped it off. I think it's kind of funny. Enjoy the butterflies. I'm Andrew Teuscher. That's Stephen Rippey. That's AJ Cleaver. Say goodbye to the friends at home.
Good luck this
See
week,
ya.
guys.